Okay, in the first presentation, we're going to talk about the first one is introducing a government files a government's notice of intent to introduce evidence of other crimes. You get it late, you need to get a response in. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at this, and obviously, you being thorough attorney you are, you fully read it. But okay, so you're down on time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to one of the models, one of the large language models, and that first large language model will be, let's do DeepSeek. All right, DeepSeek, as we've talked about, or should have talked about by now, is that doesn't have complete proprietary or confidentiality to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our document, and the first document was the government's motion to exclude. We're going to drop it in there. And what we need is a response to this. And what I'm telling you is that we're going to type in there, draft a response to the government's motion. And you can put whatever you want in here. You can tell it what you think the issue is. But let's just go with draft a response to the government's motion. And it will draft that response. Now, as I'm going to talk about later in the presentation, and this is only for this purposes, hallucinations, and they are real, and you want to definitely second guess all your sites. But as you can see, as it is now generating the arguments or the counter arguments that the government has made in its motion, and it is given the counter arguments, it's taken a lot of the to-do work out of it, some of the stuff that you spend a lot of time typing and trying to think through things. But the critical part is review, right? Because what I'm telling you is that this is going to reduce your time down to produce this time down. Now, I'd like to do this. So what I would do here is I know the cases that it's citing Drew. Obviously, this is a Drew Johnson argument. You can actually put in there the case law, attach the case law, and say I need you to review it and go through it and see if the government's motion fits that. But what I want you to do is type in, have you hallucinated any of the cases in this response, particularly, because I don't know this case offhand, Daniels. Some of you may. It's essentially this large language model. No, I have not hallucinated, and it's going to give me some of the crimes, some of the cases, but double check those sites. How would I double check those sites? It's literally just an easy Google search. You know these two cases. You know those off the back. Now, if you can afford Lexis AI, and we'll do a little presentation on Lexis AI, but for the most part, you know those cases. And the only case is really here that would probably stand out. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. Is that case. But you can essentially tell it and ask it. Now, I even sometimes will put, are you sure you didn't make up any cases? Now, obviously, it still can continue to lie to you. But to be on the safe side, you can, yes, I'm certain I did not make up any cases, okay? So it's talking to you as a person would, okay? And it's even but don't buy its BS right here. So even if it says, I went to Google Scholar, I went to Court Listener, I don't necessarily know if I'd buy it still, okay? But it's giving you where it's getting its sources from. So that's one example on if you had to respond. Now, your motion is right here, and now you're asking, well, how do I get it out of here? So that's just a simple cut and paste. Okay, so you cut it, you can actually copy it, but it's much easier, I think, if you just click your left mouse button, you copy it, you go into your Word document. Let's type in Word. You go to your Word document and you just simply post that in your Word document. And boom, you put your caption up here. So there you have your that issue is done. But the reality is you can have a back and forth with the AI models. And I can do the same thing. I'm going to go over to Google Gemini, and I'm going to do the exact same thing with Google Gemini. So I'm going to drag my the government's motion, their notice to exclude, and I'm going to say draft an opposition to this motion, and just hit enter. Now I find that Gemini, it depends on which version you're using. Gemini is pretty good, but I prefer DeepSeek on some stuff. But you may go back and forth with some of them. Now you can also, like I said right here, it is literally pulling up. You can see that if you use, there are different levels of Gemini. You have Gemini 2.5 Flash. I'll let you go into that, but that's really there's analysis on what it's doing and the large language model that it's using. Gemini is supposed to be the largest language model now. I think they're even larger than ChatGPT. When I say large language models, it's how much things are being fed to it. But you can see Gemini has done the exact same thing, and you would do the exact same thing here. One is I'm going to ask it again. Did you hallucinate any cases in this motion? Again, it will lie to you, so don't take its word don't take its word completely. But you can even see they're saying, "Hey, we couldn't have made this stuff up because these are cases that the government cited in its position. So we didn't make anything up." Okay, but that also just gives you an example. You could do the exact same thing in ChatGPT, and you can do it from there. So that's one example, and we're going to go into the next one real quick. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is you received a plea letter from the government, and now you're going to ask AI to summarize. Now, it's not a long letter, but you're lazy or you're busy, so you want to have this letter given to your AI, your large language model, and you're going to have them summarize it and present it in a format that's understandable to your client. Now, they can break it down multiple ways, but let's do the first one. So we're going to go to DeepSeek again. I'm going to throw in the plea letter that you just saw on the screen. This letter not that letter. This letter that we're gonna put this letter in there, the 6-page letter. You all have seen these letters, blah 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 blah. Your acceptance and all that. Go back over to DeepSeek. It's still reading it. It's done. So I've already put down there what I'm going to ask it to do. I want you to draft a plea letter to the client, outline the plea offer and potential consequences, and you hit enter. And you're asking, you can sort of ask it multiple times to draft a letter as you want it. And you could even say, hey, listen, this client needs to be broken down slower for him so that he understands exactly what he's pleading to. Notice how it's highlighted. You could, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could actually, if you didn't want the name, address, you could put all that stuff in there and say, hey, my law firm's name is and my client's name is. I don't recommend that, obviously, for the confidentiality issue again. And we're going to come back to the confidentiality thing because I think that's really what the big issue is going to be with some of this going forward. But as you can see here, it's literally breaking it down. And again, it's breaking down the language and kind of summarizing that 6-page letter, right? So now it's summarized that 6-page letter for a more understandable format for your client so that they understand what they're actually pleading to and what they're actually doing. So it's a breakdown. And again, the same would apply in ChatGPT. We'll use that one. We'll throw the letter in there and we will tell ChatGPT. You can see it actually is a little faster in processing that information. I put that same thing in there. I say draft a and it puts it forth just the same. And you can see that it's, let me just put got it, that it's literally doing the exact same thing. They're all kind of doing the same thing. There's little tweaks to it, and it really depends on which one you decide is the best fit for you, but they all kind of do the exact same thing. Some are a little bit more detailed. You can actually follow up. So if I went to DeepSeek and I said, tell him what constitutional rights he is waiving by pleading guilty. I don't know what it's going to do, but you could actually put that in there, and obviously you should know. It's literally going to put in there exactly what you just did. And of course, it's breaking it down again. So you can generate this quickly. And that's really what the game change is. It's really just kind of the amount of time that it's saving. But you can see where this is going in terms of our profession. And that there's going to be little that it won't be able to do eventually, except for, which is why I say, we will keep a job as litigators, as lawyers in the courtroom, because I don't think people are going to want AI judging other humans. Humans will judge humans. So that's the other example. Okay, so in our next presentation, this is the government's filed a memorandum of aid of sentencing, and they have, in their memorandum of aid of sentencing, they are asking the court to make a correction to the pre-sentence report because they're saying that the pre-sentence report writer miscalculated the actual scoring, essentially indicating that specifically the government maintains that the aggravated assault from Pennsylvania should be scored at 1 point rather than 0.25 as a misdemeanor. So they've requested that the court correct that sentencing. So now we're going to do two things. So now we're actually going to have the large language models pull in this memorandum in aid of sentencing public document, right? But we're also going to have them pull in this 139-page Sentencing Commission, the voluntary guideline manual. So if I come up with the DeepSeek, which is interesting, I've already uploaded this DeepSeek, and if you can see that DeepSeek has already indicated that they're only able to process 25% of the files. I could take the pre-sentence report and only put in the critical pages from it, but instead of doing that, because you can see DeepSeek has its limitations. One, it's because it's free, but two, because it's not as large language model as the other two. So we'll go over to Gemini, which I've already loaded those into Gemini. I paste my comment, draft a response using DC sentence to argue why the government is incorrect in their guideline analysis. So now what it's going to do is it's going to use those two attachments, this sentencing guidelines and the government's report, and we're asking it to draft an opposition. So it will draft an opposition to their memorandum of aid of sentencing, pulling in the DC guideline scores. So and cite it as well. And while that's working, we shouldn't waste any time. We're also going to do the same thing in ChatGPT, also a large language model, and so they're able to do the response just the same as well. They're reading the documents, both of them. You can see it can take a little while because they're the volume of data on that. Now, if you get the more volume that it's going through, the longer it does take. So let's see who's going to win the race. They're both still reading the documents, and the beauty is that you can actually do other things while it's doing it. Now, ChatGPT has some other additional ones that you can actually pull in, and you can see that they finished first. So, and I can say to ChatGPT as well as Gemini, I need this in motion format. But they're actually, if you look at this, in this case, the Pennsylvania simply differs from the DC code, specifically considering the different statutory elements. So it's literally deciphering the information out and telling you, and it actually goes into the Pennsylvania statute and will pull the Pennsylvania statute to see why this shouldn't be applied. Now, again, anytime it's citing law, absent because I uploaded the law to it, so it has that law. But anytime it's citing law, you should be careful. So here, and I'm going to say, here is Gemini's response to it, and similarly coming up with the same argument. The government contends that the defendant's 2011 Pennsylvania assault should be scored 1 because because it's not synonymous. You can clearly see where it's coming up with the defenses from. And then government has failed to follow this mandated procedure. The Pennsylvania aggravated is exceptionally broad, defined in numerous ways where it can be committed. So it's basically stated. Now, what I would do is say, put this in motion format for me. So here I've asked it to put it in motion format to basically take what it's done and put it into a motion format, so I don't have to do as much into that. But the analysis and the process of how it's pulled in the DC sentencing guideline scoring. Again, review. Remember, you're submitting stuff to the court. I'm going to go into that at the end about what some of the courts are doing now to stop attorneys from doing what I'm doing, or trying to, or at least have us review what we're doing. It's finished. So here it basically put it into a motion format for me, so that I don't have to redo all this. And it knows that the case has been redacted, and it puts it into that format so that it makes it in more, so that it's in a more motion format, so I can just cut and paste. And again, review. If I say nothing else, I think that's the big takeaway from it. But I would just cut and paste this, copy it, put it in my Word file. And I could do the same for Gemini. So that's kind of an overview on if you were pulling two documents together. And finally, we're going to do what, some of the, just cutting down some of your workload, right? So this is a simple one, right? This is a Gerstein. I think it's a burglary Gerstein. I loaded into my large language model, so I'm just going to load them in. And I think DeepSeek is okay. And I just give me the overall summarize this document in plausible defenses for my client. Now, this is literally just looking at the Gerstein, right? Because I'm so lazy. Well, I'm not lazy. I'm just saying, if you got you're just so busy, okay? But if I just literally want to have the document summarized, this is a 2-page Gerstein, right? I literally are just summarizing a 2-page Gerstein and having it put together. A summary of that document. You may want to put this in your notes and just put it on the, and then you may want to figure out what it may have done wrong. But plausible defenses for your client is kind of what I like, is that it literally will outline some plausible defenses in just the Gerstein alone of what you may not think of everything. And I think that's what the thing is that sometimes we practice so long that we just kind of turn the robot on and we stop thinking about other challenges that it could possibly be. So it's like having that assistant that just kind of looks at it and says, hey, these are other things that, it's giving you the victim's accounts, the arrest, the evidence. I do the same thing in Gemini, and I get similar results. I'm not going to do ChatGPT, but you can kind of see it's basically there to kind of make your life a little easier. So you're not using all your brain cells on one thing. So here it did the exact kind of analysis. I think it's a little bit more detailed. I think Gemini's analysis is a little bit more detailed. Sometimes I just want the fast analysis, which is why sometimes I just use DeepSeek. But I just need a fast analysis. So that's why I sometimes will use DeepSeek. But you can see that the analysis in Gemini and ChatGPT can be broader, or they should be broader, because they're using larger languages models than DeepSeek, as far as I know. And DeepSeek is pretty open too. So that just kind of gives you the overview of doing a typical Gerstein and just summarizing it with your large language model. And the final thing I'm going to discuss on large language models is the ability for them to interpret images. Whether it's letters from clients' families that you want to include, where someone handwrites a letter and they write the letter to the judge and you want to incorporate or want to understand what they've written, you can actually have the large language models scan that image in on your phone or whatever and have them analyze that image. For example, I'm going to give you an example. One of the issues I routinely have is calculating the duration of body camera footage, or just because the way it's written out. So if I take this body camera footage and I snip the time out of it right here. So let's just say I'm going to just snip the time, and that's just for that portion of time. I could break it up even more. And now I give it to the large language model and I say, calculate the time with hours and minutes. So I've just cut and snippet from that little piece of the body camera footage, and I'm asking it to add up the 22 minutes 10 seconds and just put the calculations up there, and it's literally summarizing how much time that is. Now, if I had to go through and you were trying to figure out how much time you spent in going through those videos, so now you just figured it out. It's 2 hours and 11 minutes and 21 seconds. And the same would apply to all of them are able to do that. And you just say calculate the time. But that would apply to almost any images. And I would just say calculate time. If you want a text, you needed to review something, or even in your vouchers, you can actually have it go through your vouchers. You don't want to summarize the voucher, you can literally just cut and paste from your voucher, and it can literally just go through that voucher. So I hope that helps, and see you around. Thanks.